We're back, and this is Global TV Talk Show, today in concert with LinkedIn Live around the world. So here we are. We have an array of talent, beautiful talent here to join us. Everybody here is basically an entrepreneur, and so we're going to be talking about the psychology of why are we beating ourselves up being an entrepreneur when we could probably ask Gary Sanger to find us a job. But we're going to introduce each other now and get going with our topic of who are we and what are we doing? And the idea is to create a culture for well-being in the workplace. Okay, this is the rage, very hot topic out there, well-being. And what does that mean to an entrepreneur? So first of all, let's go to Annaleiza Landa, who's in England, and her podcast is all about values.
It is indeed.
What's a value? What is that?
Okay, so I define a value as a deeply held principle, idea, or belief that drives our behavior and shapes our reality.
Ooh.
Time to leave the meeting. Thank you.
So anybody who wants to talk with Annaleiza, use the chat and introduce yourself and share your email, your website, your phone number, date of birth. No, you don't have to do that. So yes,
I was going to say, it's that last part that usually gets people, is the defining of the reality that gets people.
Oh, I thought you were going to say date of birth.
Most of us, I think, recognize our values as being our motivators, or maybe some of us don't, but it's recognizing that they actually shape our outcomes as well, that people don't always understand.
Annaleiza, key value of yours is?
Oh, right. Okay. Justice, fairness, recognition, service, growth, and autonomy, and creativity as well. They're my core values.
Eisha, tell us about your values. I'm not laughing. I'm just saying, oh my God, here we are, off the cuff.
A core value of Pronounce Me is fun, because languages are about communication and human relationships, and that should be fun. And not knowing how to speak a language clearly shouldn't be an impediment to having great communication, to having fun. And so we make the process of learning very fun. And I have a lot of fun going into the corporate world, working with guys in suits, very high-powered executives, and making them sing or making them do funny tongue twisters. And this is not just for the sake of it. It's really to get them to work on the sounds that don't exist in their own language, the sounds of English that they're not producing clearly. And so it's about, fun, community, embracing diversity, achieving high standards in our communication that lead to better performance in the workplace. Voila.
And we have with us from Geneva, Pierre Geronimo. How should I pronounce your name?
Geronimo, if you want it, because if you say Geronimo, it's like an Apache, right? So, which I'm not, as you can see, I don't have the Apache hat, right?
That's funny. Okay, so you deal with people who don't speak English as a primary language.
That's correct. Yep, clearly, yeah, because we source talents all across the globe, and we relocate them where they are needed. So basically, we are into repatriation a lot in our day-to-day activity. And we work mainly with, global hubs for corporations. So Geneva is 44% of the population are foreigners, and many other places like when I was in Singapore or Dubai or any other places, any other hubs where people come from all over the world and speak a lot of languages.
Well, Pierre just came back from a whirlwind tour of Dubai and Singapore, and I saw some of those pictures. I put them up on that info site. So if you have any more pictures you want me to display, let me know.
The one I can publish?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's right. So, Annaleiza, that sound problem has gone away. I thank you very much. So
Yes,
Chris
I agree.
Exline, are the bombs falling?
Not in Warsaw, no.
Yeah,
I hope not.
right. Well,
If they're falling in Poland, we've got much larger issues than any of us could have ever envisioned.
I know, I can imagine all the balloons over there, you know, watching everything.
Yeah, what's going on with all the aliens in the United States, Ed? That's all we
I-
hear about.
Well,
There's
I don't know. I think
alien
Gary
invasions,
probably
huh?
can answer that. What do you think about all these balloons, Gary?
Just knock them down. Let's get on with our real stuff here. You know, I think back on the values, it's really at the heart of what is a company? You know, what's the company here for? What does it stand for? And, you know, it becomes a beacon then in terms of me being in the headhunting business. So we do retained search, oftentimes confidential. And the person that's looking at this company, what is this company's values? What does it stand for in good times and bad? You know, to me, that's the heart of it. And how you walk it, how you talk it, how you do those in difficult situations. I mean, I'm a big baseball fan. I love the Dodgers. And I'm still absolutely torqued and wired and all those bad words toward Houston in terms of the cheating. And they thought it was okay. I think companies that want to cheat, you know, those values, sooner or later, you know, the good guys and the good gals aren't going to be a part of them. So, Annaleiza, I appreciate you going right to the core of values and who's on your team. You know, what do you represent? I'm a farm kid from Idaho, and so always thinking I was, you know, battling uphill and, you know, trying to have to outwork somebody and be somebody then that you can count on to get the work done.
Thank you, Gary.
Hey, Chris Exline, you're an entrepreneur par excellence, very successful business guy for many years, and congratulations. So were you bored or something with life or something? Is that why you picked yourself up and went into the mouth of the tiger here in Ukraine and getting involved in self-imposed depravity and being in a danger zone, actually? So I'm trying to set
Eisha
this
starts
up.
diagramming your sentences and picking those apart, why don't we? One thing just on what Annaleiza and Gary were saying is, on the values, I believe as an executive, someone that's had, you know, and over 700 and over 1,000 employees, what served me well across so many cultures is the ability to be approachable, knowing that people can come to you without getting their head bitten off, without getting scolded, without feeling stupid, but actually being approachable. And in my career, I've learned more by having delivery drivers or, you know, retail floor staff come up and tell me about problems than I've ever heard from the legions of people underneath me that want to just give me good news. And so to answer your question directly, but yet not ending with directly, because then Eisha would tell me that would be grammatically incorrect as well. Now, I guess I was kind of bored, Ed, but I also it wasn't just boredom so much as I believe, and Gary's probably seen this, is that as you advance in your career, it's not that you have this unbridled energy or enthusiasm or insane idea that you can do anything. You become an experience, or you actually see things through all of your experiences. And so when, you know, the Russians invaded Ukraine on February 24th, starting this phase of the war, I think, like the rest of the world, I stood in amazement that 3-4 weeks later, Ukraine had still held firm. And the exposed fallacies of the Russian strategy were laid bare, and sadly, tragically, with their, you know, soldiers dead on the battlefield. So from my experiences in Iraq, Djibouti, South Sudan, Afghanistan, Libya, and other places where we were the first furniture rental company, I realized that many of the same things were aligning in Ukraine. And so I started tasking our people, like, you know, why aren't we there? And what I decided to do differently this time is, instead of just flying in, having some photo ops, of course, with the children, I said, you know what, I want my actions to be my statement. And, you know, I'm going to move to Ukraine. I'm going to be there. Because if you're talking about values, if you're talking about articulating a vision, if you're talking about leading by example, then damn it, nothing is more powerful than me actually being there. I don't have to say too much because when the power's out, I don't have power. When the water's off, I don't have water. And you're in this small town and you're delivering mattresses to people, but yet you're also, like I'm here in Warsaw because for the next couple of days, we have the Rebuild Ukraine conference. So on part of me, I'm dealing with on government and qualified contractor levels with the European Union on providing and kind of creating what the reconstruction effort will look like. But then on a basic level, I'm in a town of 20,000 people with 40% unemployment and 3,500 refugees. Sadly, that number's about to increase dramatically with the Russian offensive that's beginning as we speak. So, I guess because my company had reached a certain stage, I'm blessed to be in a position with a supportive family, a supportive partner, that I said, you know what, I'm going to move to Ukraine and I can be there for as long as it takes to make sure that we get all the operational things put into place. And, if it's successful, then it's success for Ukraine. And if it fails, then it's my failure. But I was very happy to be able to do that. And it's been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
Cheers. Cheers.
No cheers. The cheers go to the soldiers that are on the front lines. Being in a small town last weekend, as we had heavy snowfall, we were all in the town square trying to provide comfort to the mother and father of the 26th hero from our small town in Kremenetz that had paid the ultimate price for freedom. And I'll stop after this, but one of the things that yes, I'm from the United States. Yes, I've lived in Hong Kong for 25 years, but I also live in Madrid, Spain. And so as Europeans, what we fail to understand is that Poland, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, Hungary, Czech, Slovakia, in 1989, they didn't pay for their freedom. Right now, the Ukrainians are paying for their freedom. And what Zelensky said to a joint session of Congress to the world was that, we don't need your soldiers, we'll do the fighting. That's the first time anyone's ever said that. And as those of us that live in democracy, those of us that have the freedom of self-expression, the freedom of self-determination, if we don't come alongside and support Ukraine at this moment, then what do we support? Well, I would ask Annaleiza and Gary, what are the values of the industrialized nations at that point?
That's
Annaleiza,
really,
why don't you take it from here, Annaleiza?
Very, very good question. And Chris, I really applaud your humility, and I just like to say that although you played it down, I don't think you should play down the example, the leadership example that you set, that we should all look to. So although you say it's the Ukrainians, right, and the soldiers who are doing the fighting, nevertheless, you've done more than most people would in the courage that you've shown and the sacrifices that you've made to be there. So I think we can all learn from your values. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm so glad that you are here today.
Again, let me be very clear, and I appreciate that, Annaleiza. But I'm blessed. I mean, I've got a phenomenal partner that allows me to do this, blesses me to do this. And what is the real value? Me sitting, I mean, Ed knows this. I live in a penthouse on arguably one of the most expensive streets on planet Earth. What am I gonna do? Sit there with my gin and tonic and friends on a rooftop, toasting over Hong Kong, saying, bless the children? Or if as I tell people, and I've been saying this to employees for 25 years, if you have a chance to make a difference, then that's a chance you have to take. What type of leadership values do I have if I pontificate that, and yet when I've got the ability to do it, I fail to rise up and do so? So it's not really about me being courageous. It's not really me about being entrepreneurial. It's just about me actually living out what I've been talking for the past 30 some odd years.
Eisha, jump in here. So you're involved with Oxford University Innovation, which is unusual and very prestigious. And it's really a pleasure for me to have you on this program. Why don't you talk a little bit about your graphics that I saw on your website this morning, and I posted on the PR page that promotes this program going forward today, about understanding proper business language, English?
Sure. Well, the basic problem that people in business often have when they're international is the education system that we have doesn't pay a lot of attention to spoken language skills. And it's perfectly possible for someone to have a very good English qualification on paper and not necessarily speak the language very clearly, not necessarily feel confident making presentations, and not necessarily having the cultural savvy as well about I mean, we're talking about a lot of potential situations here. So it might be a situation where they're in an English speaking country and they're not very familiar with the culture and they don't get certain references or idioms, or it may just be that they're in an international environment and their spoken English needs to be a certain standard in order for them to present remotely and be understood by their team and by their clients. So whichever situation it is, there's bound to be a gap that can be filled by this training, which is research-based. And the idea is to create a bridge between the learner's native language and the sounds of English. So if they're a French speaker, the exercises, the program they get will be slightly different from a Turkish speaker or a Spanish speaker or a Mandarin speaker, because anybody will bring the habits and the sounds that they have from their own language to speaking another language. And in the case of English, because English has a lot of sounds that don't exist in other languages, that can create speech that is really unclear in some situations. So, it sounds very technical, and in a sense it is, but the basic idea is to facilitate communication in international situations where English is the lingua franca.
Gary Sanger is an international guy in his work. Gary, why don't you explain about Sanger Associates and your tie-in with the global Orchestra?
Yeah, thank you. 45 countries, 90 cities. Orchestra is the new name for what was IRC Global Search Partner. So 45 countries, 90 cities, other business owners that are in the search business. We're able then to help our clients in other countries where I can't even spell their language name, let alone say it or speak in it. So we are that global reach in terms of doing headhunting for our clients all around the globe. I'm just really struck to be in the audience here. I think when we're getting an echo again here, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
But I think the idea of, as we represent our client, who are they by what services they provide, what values do they have as their foundation, and what causes, what support systems do we have? Anybody here that doesn't have close friends or neighbors or folks that are either Ukrainian or are there now or trying to help them? I think this is a global effort that we're trying to do. And we here, as we have clients, most of us are one-trick folks, and having others that are fantastic in their field to help us, I think that that truly makes sense. I think that truly makes sense.
Thank you. Annaleiza.
Yeah, so I just want to pick up on that actually, because the Oxford Research Project, I thought I'd muted for a second. The Oxford Research Project actually did a value survey last year of 221 businesses, and collaboration, not integrity, off the top spot actually. So what you're saying about collaboration is a valid point. People working together, uniting and working together across borders.
Yeah. So Pierre, tell us about Anywhere, the foundation of that, and where in your view is this going to go?
Well, basically, Anywhere was founded 10 years ago. I mean, we used to be named Coptalis, but we have raised some private equity, around 80 million euros in June. So we changed name because Coptalis was very difficult to pronounce. I think we had a broadcast where you said it's Coptalis or Coptalis. So we picked up a more international name. So basically, the company was founded 10 years ago by two entrepreneurs, one being in headhunting and recruitment, and the other one being into social entrepreneuring. And they decided that a bit was missing in the recruitment world and in global mobility. meaning the idea was to create a company that was able to recruit in any form of employment, to adapt to the new trends, whether, it's permanent hiring or it's freelancers or it's business consultant on short-term mission, remote workers, to offer all the forms and to accompany these talents when they relocate. So basically, the idea is to focus not only on the corporate clients, but also on the talents themselves, and to help them change lives. So it's like a double focus on the corporate, but on the talent. So that's the idea behind that. And since then, the company has grown and made several M&A, basically acquiring immigration and relocation companies. And why? Because you need these resources to be able to provide the services to get the work permit, the residence permit, and to assist these families when they relocate. So that's the idea of growing that business. So today we are in 16 countries. We employ around 750 employees around the world, and we keep growing. And again, the idea is because we are a French tech company, meaning having a digital ecosystem supported by real recruiters, people with not as experienced as Gary, but I mean, they are real consultant. We're not a job portal where people that just publish their ads. The idea is like all our candidates in our ethical database, they are being interviewed. And the idea is that we put the talent in the center, and we're not like, we don't care about the talent. We serve our client, the idea like, focusing on the human beings and relocating them. And on top of that, in the DNA of Anywhere, there is this social engagement, because that's really the message that is conveyed by our CEO. At a very reduced level compared to what Christopher said, when the war in Ukraine happened, the first reaction from our CEO was, we stopped the COMEX meeting. We're going to talk about that and how we can help, how we can use the Anywhere resources to help refugees, because we have had a program for at least for 5 to 6 years, which is called Mercury program, where we assist refugees in France, refugees from Syria, from Afghanistan, and we use our headhunting recruitment resources to help them find a job, and that in relation with the local French authorities, because these people, when they find a job, they grow their family and they eventually pay taxes. So it's a win-win situation for everybody, because nobody wants to stay on benefits. They want, and we had a lot of talents. We had doctors, engineers coming from these various countries. So we did at our very, very modest level compared to Christopher is doing, because we are not in Ukraine, but we help book buses from Lodz and from Bucharest and organize the transfer. And we assisted, I think, and again, we don't put that forward. We don't really put that forward, but I think we assisted something like 600 families. So it's a little in the big ocean of refugees, but I think if everybody do their own little contribution, I guess we'll get to a better world.
When you interview people, you do it virtually, right?
It depends. It can be face-to-face, or it can be virtual. When I went to Singapore and Dubai, it was like face-to-face interviews. So basically, it can be a mix depending where people are based.
I ask that because of the values, just to use that word, and our theme, creating a culture for well-being to evolve in a workplace. And it's not easy to do that because it's a lot of BS sometimes too. So how do you interview people online and get your humanity across?
It is a very good question, Ed. And I think that the humanity is also coming from the candidates, because they have a lot of questions about values, about engagement, about, for example, a lot of interviews, they are really challenging what our clients are doing, meaning, I'm going to use a stereotype, so don't blame me for that. But, a lot of companies say we are planting trees in Amazonia, which is a great thing, right? But a lot of candidates would say, yeah, it's a good thing. It's a good start. But in your local community, what are you doing? It's nice to hear you do things, thousands of kilometers away, but how your company is contributing locally. And I think a lot of people, particularly we are very much focusing on IT and digital world. So I think a lot of people are already accustomed to having digital interviews. So there is a lot, people are just like, they forget the face-to-face thing, and the screen has become a face-to-face. So we're getting into a new generation. And of course, in a recruitment, it will never remain only virtual. At a certain point, there will be a face-to-face, meeting. But I think that can also extend, technology is allowing us to increase the reach of the candidates, because before there were some technical limits to interview people. Telephone interview is not the best thing, because we all know as consultants and headhunters that there is the non-verbal communication that is key, maybe more important than the verbal communication. However, I think there are a lot of candidates today that we can consider, because we can reach them and have an interview. We can have an image, we can have a dialogue, a video. So it's increasing the potentiality of the candidates we can interview. And at a certain stage, there will be a face-to-face interview.
Eisha, how do you use, how do you practice? Do you do it online as well as in person?
Yes, primarily online since the pandemic. I do go in person in certain situations, and it works equally well, to be honest, because the material, the media that we use, you end up putting it on screen anyway, whether you're physically present with the person or not. So it's very easy, as you know, to share presentations and so on Zoom. I also get my clients to physicalize certain things, and you can ask them to do that via Zoom, or you can ask them to do that in person. Sometimes the way that we embody our native language is different to the way that we would embody English as a learned language. And sometimes my clients say that they feel that they're taking on a new persona when they become more fluent English speakers. So that's a very exciting transformation to witness and be part of.
Annaleiza?
Here. I was just going to say, talking about mobile and the mobile world of working, I think we're on an always on culture now, where we're always accessible. We're always on the end of an email, always expected to be on the end of an email, always on the end of a phone. And everything from our work to interviewing, as we've heard today, to delivering, as I do online, because I seek clients all over the world, not locally, we're in danger really of just being sucked into our screens. And that is going to be bad for our physical health as well as our mental health, because our whole world will be on mobile, from client work to recruitment, to then going onto social media, checking our calendars, checking our emails. So we're going to see, as I think we are seeing, a lot of issues from neck problems and migraines and carpal tunnel syndrome. And I think it's really important for employers to recognize this. And I think when we're talking about wellness in the workplace, in this mobile world that we're living in now, employers need to somehow reach their remote workers. And if we work alone as well, I think it's important for us to do a check, to value ourselves. We're talking about values, but do we value our work, our business, and others more than we value ourselves? As you know, Edwin, I pulled an all-nighter on Saturday working on the first episode.
And it doesn't show.
But last night even, thank you. Kind of you. Makeup does wonders, and lighting as well.
It was your 2 a.m. when you sent me that message.
Yes, it's 2 a.m. and 5 o'clock in the morning. I was still captioning, and that still isn't finished until I literally had one of those awful moments, when you're in bed and your whole body jerks, you feel as though you're falling. And that's what happened to me. I literally fell asleep over the keyboard, but had that horrible experience of jerking awake. My hands hit the keyboard. I lurched, my dog next to me lurched. At that point, I shut the lid, And I was thinking, wow, I'm really going to pay for this. How much do I value myself? It was straight upstairs and to bed. It shouldn't get to that though. We need to ask ourselves how much we value ourselves. Employers need to ask, how much am I valuing my staff as well? Am I asking too much of my staff? Because staff who are ill cannot deliver for you. And there is too much emphasis these days on programs that encourage yoga, meditation, mindfulness, gadgets to monitor how stressed you are. But if the sickness is coming from the workplace, if the sickness is coming from the workload and from the culture, that's what needs to be addressed. It's the root of that. So employers, leaders need to value their teams and their staff. I saw somebody post on LinkedIn, actually, it was quite interesting. Somebody who obviously runs their own company, who is trying to justify coming in at 10 o'clock in the morning and leaving at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, saying, don't judge the leader who does this. Now, we don't want leaders, to die on the job. However, he was saying, you don't see me in the shower when I'm thinking about work. You don't see me lying in bed next to my wife when I'm thinking about work, or thinking about work when playing with my kids. And I was thinking, what planet are you on? Do you actually think your staff switch off, don't think about work and how to improve their teams or their functions or their roles or contribute to the business when they're not at work? Sure, if you're going to let them come in at 10 and go at 3 because of the discretionary effort that they're putting in, fine. But that attitude of entitlement breeds resentment, it breeds anger, it breeds cynicism. Where you have resentment, anger, and cynicism, you have ill health waiting to happen, because those things fester inside of us and we become ill. And if that workplace is our only choice right now, there's nowhere else for us to go, we just have to suck it up. So we really need to be aware of the values that we're modeling, and respect wellness, and do something about it.
Yeah,
And
Pierre.
I would add something that is quite interesting. We see more and more, with all the trends of people working remotely, working from home. There is a lot of stress going on because you cannot share the stress with your colleagues at the coffee machine or with your colleagues, etc. And this also is impacting the family life, because you need to, exhaust the stress you have accumulated during the day, when the only way to communicate with your colleagues or your peers is through a screen. And it goes to your wife, it goes to your partners, it goes to your children. And something like very interesting happened to me a few weeks ago. I've met a very successful EMEA business developer, and he told me, I want to apply those anywhere. Is anywhere recruiting? I said, well, anywhere is of course recruiting, because we are a startup, we're doubling the employees every year. But I said, you seem to be very successful in that organization. I saw you, your CEO, you seem to enjoy that organization. And I said, why are you willing to change? And he said, because I'm working remotely from home and I want to be in a team. I want to see real people, because I take, he said, directly all the stress from the screen. And that is something that will impact a lot the mental health of a lot of employees worldwide. And that's something that is becoming a huge problem. You're talking about well-being, but well-being is also the fruit of a kind of balance between family, your own environment, between your professional colleagues, but also personal and social life. And your social life cannot be only through a screen, because that guy was telling me, when I walk outside in my residential neighborhood, I meet people who are lovely, but they're all retired. So my social life, people my age or even younger, is down to zero. And my social life, my professional life cannot be only through screens. And I think we have a point over here. And we will see a growing concern, people changing jobs because of this, because they want a real life.
We got about 20 minutes remaining here. I know some of you have other things to do. I thank you for your time here. I want to make sure everybody gets value from this. This is really important to me. That's my ROI and my sense of doing this, is that others can benefit directly from being on this program. And part of that is sharing your contact details on the chat. Make sure you take away for follow-up some other time. And of course, I welcome you to come back on various programs that I will be producing. In May, I'm going to be doing my first live meetings in 3 years. And, frankly, I'm a little nervous about it all. We're going to start in London. Joanne and I are going to fly over and meet with some friends and then do a meeting. It'll most likely be on the Strand in that area of town by Covent Gardens. And it's going to be a luncheon plus an education session. So people can attend virtually, or they can pay me a couple $100 and buy a ticket and have some lunch and meet face to face. The broadcast portion will not be during lunch or the reception, only during the education, because this is exactly what we're doing here for 3 years, is education by this way. But at lunch, there'll be no broadcasting. And so Chris Exline is going to be involved. Andy Elliman, some of you have met him on my programs before. And Michael Piker, who's executive with Flutter Entertainment. He's going to be our keynoter. And I've invited some others, but I have to chase it down. We are looking for sponsors all the time to help pay the bills. And then the next day, May 10, we're going to do the same in Paris, and that's still being developed right now. I have some interest from a few people, but it needs to be solidified. Once again, luncheon plus education. Meeting will start at noon, meet and greet, reception. About half hour later, we'll sit down to a lunch, catered lunch, and then remarks, introductions, of course. And then about 1 hour later, meaning about 2 o'clock, we'll start the broadcast education. And that will go about an hour and a half at max. And then we'll have an in-person reception and then leave. And the same format in every city. So in London and Paris. And then I'm planning to do a Scandinavia event in Copenhagen. So Joanne's family is from Copenhagen, so we're going to have a weekend with them. But I'm looking now, Pierre, I'm talking with Michelle about being a co-host, but that's not final yet in Copenhagen. And I have a speaker, an HR exec from Malmo, Sweden, which is right across the bridge. So she'll be involved. So we'll try to get others involved. And then from there, it's a little tenuous. Planning on May 15, Hamburg. And I already have some people lined up for that program, but no venue yet. Again, the same format. I have to get into all that. And then from there, we could do Geneva. We could. If there's time and interest, but we can also go to Milan, where I have a program planned for the 17th of May, but I'm not sure that's going to be a live meeting because there's too many issues with my key people there. So not sure what we'll do. Maybe we'll just go to Sorrento, Amalfi Coast and hang out rather than work, and to have some peace of mind. But I wanted you to know what we're doing out there. It's pretty exciting. In June, we're going to do the same kind of meeting, virtual and in person, in Montreal, also in Toronto. And we're working on a Latin America tour for later in the year. So it's a great opportunity because of the global reach that's possible through Zoom. And all of these programs will be housed on our YouTube station, which is getting an amazing eyeball count, and global TV talk show has had over 6,000 audience views since January 1, which is more than double a year ago. So my job has become crazy making, because I've got to find sponsors to pay for all this. and I can't charge people to attend. No one will pay to do this, but the sponsors will care about the exposure they get going forward. And so that's the key of success. So Chris Exline, God bless you for doing what you're doing. I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but you're like an inspiration, to me and some of the others on the show. Well, because you're actually doing it. I don't mean to embarrass you, but I mean this is something that people will remember forever.
Well, we're not an NGO. We're a business. And so as we looked at the market entry into Ukraine for furniture rental and aiding reconstruction, obviously our core business of expatriates renting furniture didn't exist because there weren't that many inbounds into Ukraine. So I said, well, what do we do in the interim? And since we are vertically integrated, we do most of our manufacturing of furniture in China. That's where the inspiration for a mattress factory came up. So local governments found out that we were coming in, investing in the country. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, find a mattress factory for me. Find something that is, out of business or struggling, and we can give it orders, we can give it technology, and we can, save those jobs. And then, so we did that, and that's how we ended up in Kremenetz, in the Ternopil state. And then it's like, well, who's going to get these mattresses? Well, it's not like we're just going to, go up to the department stores or or traditional channels of distribution. And so we looked at the refugee situation around us and I said, well, okay, we've got the ability to do this. Why don't we go around and just start donating these mattresses that we're making to the internally displaced refugees? And then what happened is friends of mine basically found out what we were doing. They said, hey, can I donate a mattress? I said, sure, why not? And so that's why we came up with the Rest Assured Ukraine, because people actually do want to participate in helping these people at a basic place of need, which is delivering a mattress. And because I've had experience with some NGOs and mostly in Iraq and Afghanistan, I said, we're going to do something a little bit different. If friends of mine or acquaintances of mine are giving us, $100 US and we subsidize the rest of that, I said, I'm going to personally deliver it, and I'm going to put a label with their name on it so they can see that $1 they've donated is actually $1 delivered. It's not, me with some shots and some gin and tonic with the kids. I just said, what, this is not going to be, this is going to be fully transparent. They donate it, give me the names for the label. We'll put a label on the mattress and I will deliver that. And as of now, we've delivered almost 2,000 mattresses in the past 4 months. And but like I've said, I've never done this before, but we're about to make an urgent call because, the spring offensive will basically force tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians from Kyiv and central Ukraine into temporary accommodations in the western part. And so we need to really ramp up capacity to assist those. So that's what we're doing. So it's not being courageous. It's not being, it's Pierre and Gary, they see this when they're interviewing the senior executives. I mean, it's not, what are your values? It's basically, you were presented a situation. What did you do? And how was there anything innovative that you did that others didn't? So, like I said, it's not that I'm that intelligent or anything like, or I had this grand vision of what Ukraine's going to be, because every day we're presented with obstacles and every day we overcome them. I mean, but because of the quiver of experiences I have, the arrows in my quiver, sorry, but because of these experiences, I've been able to rely upon those and said, okay, well, this is the situation we have. We can't change it. We're not going to end the conflict. We're not going to influence the outcome of the conflict. But if we are manufacturing these mattresses and they just can't sit in a warehouse. So what do we do with them? And that's that's what we've been able to do. So it's just basically born out of necessity and a reaction to a situation more so than a grand Harvard business case study.
Gary, what do you see here?
Go back to the topic you started this with in terms of well-being, in terms of balance. And here's a board exec that's paying out there and was going to do something about it. I think it's fabulous. I think it's really fabulous to have the guts to go make it happen. There's not a playbook for this. You go figure it out and you go do the best that you can. I'm reminded of, in the big picture, when you think about your team or you think about your client's team, you don't want to hire jerks. You don't want to hire those arrogant so-and-sos that have all the answer but never do anything. I'm reminded of a few sayings. And again, I'm a farm kid from Idaho, way back when. So I knew what the heck hard work was all about. And I certainly knew what playing hard and having fun was all about. So there was a good balance on that as to how my father treated his two slaves, his two sons, in terms of how all this was done. So if you're hiring somebody, would you go to dinner with them? Would you go have breakfast with them? Would you introduce them to your parents or your family or friends? That eliminates an awful lot of people, even though they may have the most skills in the world. Would you go out and have a drink with them, go out and have dinner with them? Number two, I don't think there's a balance usually in most interviews, in that I think most of it is skewed towards quantitative skills. Check the box, see the degrees, see what they know in engineering, see what they know in manufacturing. Go to the qualitative side. And what is this person really like? Have them tell you a couple stories about how they played boss. Now that seems corny, right? How do you play boss and get things done? And if they're into the I zone versus we, if they're not out there talking about the 80% of their team that's blue collar and making it happen, I think those stories are very telling. It's the back of the business card. What do you talk about in terms of your family? What do you talk about at hobbies? Do you have a cause out there where you did something? There are a million Chris's out there, but many of them go low key. They don't talk about it. They don't make that front and center. A few people are on dozens of boards and they don't do a darn thing. So I'm just really enthralled by this, Ed. Thank you for the question.
Oh, Gary, thank you. But on an earlier show a few weeks ago, you talked about an engagement interview, and you brought up the issue of, is a guy a phony? In other words, while he was in the room face to face in the interview, he was Mr. Wonderful, and yet you asked the receptionist, how did he treat you when he came through the door?
I was maybe 24, 25, and I was in a HR personnel job, and my company was trying to hire an executive to run all of manufacturing. And even back in the day, this was for about 12, 15 plants, Puerto Rico, Mexico, US, and we're making healthcare products. So you made them wrong, you killed people. And this exec had an offer. He came back for one more interview. And my job was basically to be a chauffeur to get him to all those meetings. And in the debrief, my boss said, well, what's the guard say? What's John out there at the guard shack say? And what is gosh, now I've forgotten her name. Sylvia, what did she say about, this guy? She ran the reception desk. And I talked with them both, and they both said, look, I'll give you the answer that you're looking for, and you're going to tell me that's the real answer. The guy at the front gate, John, said, look, he treated me like I was nobody. He didn't give me any respect, didn't even bother to say hello. And Sylvia at the switchboard said, she just didn't have any regard for this person. And, because he just really wasn't nice. He wasn't approachable. So we're debriefing this with our CEO. And he said, well, what do you think? I said, well, long story long, I think we can do better. If he's not going to show respect to the blue collar folks that are going to be 15,000 of them out there, they'll see through that. Let's go find somebody that can lead and care about them. I've taken that lesson and told about it many thousands of times since.
Well, thank you for doing it again. It's like
Pleasure.
the first time I'm hearing it.
Pleasure. Amazing.
Eisha, thank you for your time here and your expertise. So what's it like to be in the reality, the space of Oxford University and Oxford related innovation people?
Well, it's wonderful because just the facilities are amazing and the level of expertise that people have and the network. And, I will always feel very grateful to be part of this university. Does that answer your question? Or?
Yes, but I think, Annaleiza, what would you like to ask Eisha?
Oh, right. Okay. It was actually a word that Gary mentioned, a value that Gary mentioned, respect. And there's so much of it lacking in our society. There's so much of it lacking in our world. You asked about what values international leaders and organizations could model for everybody. And I think it is respect. There's a lot of it lacking in the workplace, and that fundamentally so many problems come from that lack of, are born from that lack of respect. And of course, we have leaders on the world stage as well, showing a lack of respect for each other, showing a lack of respect for the people they lead. And it doesn't really matter what side of the political divide you're on. We can all disagree or learn to disagree, but by respecting each other. And we're living in a world now where insults and trolling and people hiding behind false names are creating a very toxic environment and modeling the wrong values for the leaders of tomorrow, let alone the leaders of today and everybody else. And I think if there's one value that I try to encourage workplaces to adopt and create boundaries around, it's that value of respect. We respect one another in this workplace. And
Eisha, yeah, oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Eisha, when you're talking with business executives who are who don't speak English as a primary language, and English has its peculiar sounds and things, right? I can't even say it, but my tongue is tied. But how do you deal with these big, many times male egos, because they're brainiacs or doctors, super educated, and yet you have to teach them to talk all over again?
I love this question, Ed, because it's a very interesting dynamic. There's research at the University of Kansas that says that our sense of rhythm from our mother tongue comes to us in the womb. So this is something that's imprinted very strongly in us. And it can be very frustrating when somebody is a high functioning executive and yet they just can't change the rhythm that they speak with, or they can't produce certain sounds. And it's that kind of disparity where somebody that's functioning at a very high level in their workplace has to try and master a kindergarten level skill. That's how it can feel to them. And there's a certain amount of humility involved in just being willing to learn and accept that this process needs to be trained, and it's not to do with intelligence. I think that's where the misconception lies, because people think this is about intelligence, and it's really not. It's about habit, and it's about habits that have been imprinted since before birth, according to the research, and just trying to change those habits gently with practice and expand our sense of what's possible. And in this case, that means using a different rhythm when we speak, or adding new sounds that our vocal apparatus isn't used to creating. So I think it's important just to accept that it's not about intelligence, and it is a process that needs to be trained, and also that it's a really fun process. And the best way to get over the slight to the ego is to laugh about it. And a lot of laughter happens in this process.
So, Chris, are Ukrainians laughing much?
No, they're not. You talk about mental well-being, and you'd asked me about this the other week. It's to sit there and say that, well, we're all laughing or trying to find the positive side of this. I mean, there's in our small town I mentioned earlier, 26 people have died. You'd asked me the other week, Ed, how am I doing? I mean, yeah, the short answer is, if I'm talking with Pierre or Gary, yeah, everything's fine. But the honest answer is you are affected by it. You get to know these people, and you've got to be very delicate. You don't want to make light of it. You want to focus on a brighter picture. But it's kind of like, it's like, God's in control. I mean, well, okay, great. I get that, but still that doesn't bring back the lives of those that have been lost. And so, people try to laugh, people try to find pleasure and happiness and things that were comforting to them, but yet, the ever-present reality remains that it's a country at war. And this spring offensive, has a lot of people justifiably worried. And what does that mean? I mean, when we were there in November and early December, and the entire electricity grid was attacked, we could all sing Kumbaya and light candles, and I'm not making light of that. I'm not saying anything about anybody's belief system, but the reality on the ground is, you don't have water, you don't have electricity, you don't have heat, and yet you bond together. So laughter is probably not the right word. Emotional ability to cope with this is very strong. The human condition that allows people to wake up in the morning and soldier on and to go out is strong. The bonding within the communities and the compassion that they have for other people is strong. The lack of complaining, the mentality of entitlement is gone. So maybe there's not a lot of laughter, maybe there's not a lot of jokes that are being shared, but there is an unspoken bond and camaraderie that didn't exist before. And that is, as people have said on this program earlier, I mean, you don't fake that stuff. The eyes don't lie. And when you're there, they know you're there. You don't have to sit there and talk about it. You don't have to sit there and put posters up like, here I am. But you're just there. And what I find myself doing is, if I'm in a cafe or somewhere around, it's kind of strange. People just come up and want to talk to you, and you just listen. And I find that in this little town, me just listening, it just seems to make some form of difference. I don't know why. I'm not being insensitive or anything, but it's like, you don't know me, but I mean, okay, let's sit down and let's listen. And I think what it gets down to is what I've learned, is because I speak to a lot of the schools, I speak to a lot of the school children, I speak to a lot of the elderly groups. What Home Essentials has done by being there is validated what others have said for hope. And as humans, if we lose hope, we've lost darn near everything. And the fact that Home Essentials is there says that, we not only believe that there's going to be victory, but there's hope. There is some brighter sides coming. There are better days coming. That's why we're here. And it's that effort, that commitment, that investment, that not only did we save the jobs in the factory, but we've now, we're hiring and we're opening up new shops and offices. And so that type of instills a hope that people want to know more about. And that's why I'm glad to be there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, this is a blessing. Thank you. Thank you for your time, everybody. I think we can go on for another hour, but I don't think the audience will hang out that long. So I thank you. So Chris, I've
Yes,
been
sir.
asked to show to everyone your contact details. Do you mind?
I do not. I do not mind at all.
Okay.
Please do.
Right.
The chris.xline@homeessentials.net. furniturerentalukraine.com, restassuredukraine.com. All of those things are there and in development. And anybody that has any questions about anything that we're doing, the teams that we're assembling, how we're getting groundswell support within the Ukrainian community. And Eisha, you like this? I don't have an Oxford degree, but I did major with history and English literature undergrad before I had to get a business school degree. And I'll have these kids just in this little town stop in the street and want to speak English with me. And so maybe we need to have you come over, because single-handedly Home Essentials is, I keep telling people, this is, I'm sorry, but this is, Ukraine's in the middle of the second victory. The first victory that they had was that they, for the past 35 years, have been in this horrific, cathartic tug of war between the East and the West. Many of them want to go to Western Europe and the European Union and the industrialized nations, but yet many people wanted to keep their historic ties with Russia and want to be part of that Eastern system. They've spoken. They're at war right now because they have decided to go down a path of democracy, of self-determination, of freedom of expression. And democracies are not easy. Democracies have legions of issues. But yet that's what they've decided. And that was victory number one. And so as Eisha, as I tell these kids, I said, you're coming to the European Union. You're coming to the industrialized nation. So you need to learn English or Japanese, because that's what's coming down your way. And they all kind of laugh, and we speak English. And then they ask when is my first Ukrainian lesson, and I say, oh well, yeah. It's as soon as I get back from this next trip, I'll start teaching Ukrainian. But yes, so I think that getting back to it, just giving people and it's not just in Ukraine. It's with whom we come in contact with. If we've been blessed with something, can we use part of our day to bring about a piece of hope to those that may feel marginalized or without it? And whether it's the security guard or the receptionist, whether it's the people that are cleaning the stairwells in the metro, whether it's the people at Safeway at the checkout counter, what can we do on a daily basis to make people feel significant?
Chris Exline, that's EXLINE.
Chris, I just wanted to say, sorry to interrupt, I don't think I'm as brave as you are to go to Ukraine physically, but if you want an English training program for Ukrainians online, let's talk. I'm always happy to talk about that.
Fantastic. I would covet the opportunity to continue that with you.
This is very cool. Wow.
Talking about hope, what you said about hope there, Chris, again, going back to the Oxford Character Project, of 42 values identified by them in the 221 companies that they surveyed, hope was actually number 36 on that list. That's how much it's valued in business. So we really need a lot of work to do. We need to pull together to actually bring that value up, because they don't realize just what a powerful motivator it is and how important it is to people.
So isn't this more of a feminine trait?
Easy. Ed, we're not going to delve into anti-gay rhetoric now.
No, I think it's a human.
That drama part of me come out, right?
It's human trait.
Okay.
Ed, thank you for doing this and putting this together. I think a universal language also is a smile and just paying attention and showing respect and just acknowledging that. Thank you for doing this. It's really a pleasure to be part of this. Thank you, sir.
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you.
So
thank you.
We are doing a major broadcast on Feb23 that both of you are going to be involved in that, Gary and Chris, and we have 17 speakers. I don't know how I'm going to handle all that, but they're from all over the world, and I'll get you the info if you want to jump on. And then March 9, Gary is joining me in an LA broadcast with Paul Falcone and Jennifer. This is all about what's going on in LA and special talent, right, Gary? Yeah, and that lady Kim from Herbalife Nutrition.
Kim Congdon.
Yeah, right. So she's a very famous person in Southern California, a leader in people-oriented services and thinking. She's in charge of people worldwide for Herbalife, which is a $5 billion LA company. So she's featured along with Gary, and that's on March 9. And so we have a very exciting time coming up. When I started in business, well, it's been valleys, many valleys and some peaks, but this is a peak and it's still going up. And I founded a company in Boston called Settling In, which was a recruitment, public relations company. And I didn't know about employee relocations that much, but when I tied it into that, Settling In took off. And we got a lot of Chamber of Commerce use and advertising. And this is in the late 70s, just to give you an idea. And I didn't know anything about running a business, and but I knew how to sell ads and get people involved in things. I sold that business and moved to LA because President Reagan was elected and going to fight the evil empire by building up the defense industry. And most of that is based in Southern California. And that meant, even though interest rates at that time were sky high, 14, 15, 16%, the only people who could afford to buy a house in Southern California were people who were employed by some of these big companies, because they had a guaranteed income. The banks would lend a mortgage against the corporate employment. And so all the realtors made money, even though there was a big recession going on. So what I'm telling you is a story about starting from nothing, really, in a strange area. LA is very different than Boston, right, Gary? So, and very different from Idaho. But that business boomed almost immediately because the LA Chamber of Commerce became my biggest customer and my distributor. And the board of directors of the LA Chamber were the heads or senior level of every major employer in Southern California, and they all used the California Bound guidebook that I produced. And that was the foundation of starting in a tough environment for me personally. I'm not going to get into a long story here, but the story is on my website. And if anyone wants to learn about all that, being an entrepreneur is not new to me. Making it work over a period of time, that has been the biggest challenge. So I thank you for supporting this with your presence and your ideas, because I didn't know anything about Zoom. I was afraid of the camera 3 years ago, March 1st. That's when we launched Global TV. We've had almost 250,000 visitors, audience, views, cumulative since then. We've produced 560 something programs. And I thank you for listening and participating, and I want you to all come back. Thank you for being on Global TV.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
It's
Thank
been
you,
a lesson from me. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody. Be safe.
Everyone.
Bye.
Everybody.
Thank
Really,
you.
really a pleasure.
Bye now.